What were you saying, Matthias? Boom, boom. Okay. Hey everybody, where is this? Hey everybody. Welcome to the welcome to the BWU Esports stream for our over. Oh, never mind. I was gonna say welcome to the stream for BWU Esports GLEC Overwatch, but we just I don't know, we just got kicked out of the server apparently. So it looks like we're going to be going to a little bit of technical difficulties, a little bit of a issue here. But welcome, season opener here for GLEC Esports.
We are going to take a short break
Yeah, we're
though,
going to go
while
on
we're trying to
break.
figure
Sorry,
everything out
everybody.
though.
Hey everybody. So sorry about that one. We're now back, hopefully for the last time. Um, Hopefully we won't have any more tech issues. And we got some BWU Overwatch going on for us today. I'm here. My name is Error. I've got LT Barone here with me. And we're going to be casting some Overwatch here today. This is a showcase of a very new roster here for the BWU squad here. We've got a lot of new players, a lot of call-ups into our ranks coming in from last time that we ended up playing this around. And this new roster, it's got a lot of players from our last academy roster, so should be a lot of good chemistry here coming out for this team.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, from there's a lot of players from the old team that is right back at it, and even though they were at a CAD, many of them proved themselves to be good enough for varsity this year or this semester. So, just the transition between there should not be that much because it's been the people that you've been playing since academy.
Yep. And as I say, this start off here for Control should be pretty good. Uh, Control has always been a struggle map for a lot of our teams, as we see here. It looks like it's going to be a little bit of a more difficult start here as the full team's wiped. That little bit of a pause in between, going to need to take a little bit of a break, a little bit of a reset, figure out what the strategy is coming in here for this next push.
Now as somebody that you've been on the varsity team before. You at least knew what the roster was last time and how it felt. What do you think is one big thing that they need to change, like practicing with academy?
I mean, the biggest thing with always like when we look at a lot of things, and especially even moments like this kind of show it, is there's a little bit of like there's obviously going to be a difference in like just raw skill level. There's varsity and academy, but one of the biggest things is the individual like playmaking that players will go for. We often see it be a little bit higher on the varsity side compared to the academy side. And so it's getting the academy players comfortable with going for solo plays and trying to go like off, not necessarily on their own, but be comfortable with making play calls on their own to go for certain moves and kind of direct the team if they see an opening.
Yeah, and right now we have not been seeing much of an offense right now, or much of a push for academy. I mean, for varsity, excuse me. It just looks like Manchester just keeps having them cornered. They take everyone out until it is only Duke Nukem on Ramatra right now, and then after that, they just target him.
Yeah, it's been a. I was gonna say this map. I know from like a lot of our teams, our academy rosters when I was on it, the varsity roster when I was on it, just all around the board. Control has always been a mode set that BW Esports has struggled with, and we've never really been able to quite figure out why. It's just throughout different iterations, throughout different things, never quite found a flow. And this start of the line is looking pretty similar to everything else.
Yeah, but right now they have, well, they had an ult, but that was taken out by Hazard, and this is the first time almost the whole time that they've been able to get on point right now. And with that carry down, that it's one less support. Are they going to be able to capitalize? And they're not going to use it with a. Never mind.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It happens. Slow starts are always a thing within Overwatch, and I know this map especially, not even just Control in general or Lijiang in general, but Gardens especially has always been a struggle for pretty much every iteration of this roster that I've ever seen. Um, Switching on over now to Labs, the one I always call Space, I've had teams find very, very good success with this map. So I'm hoping to see some of that carry over into this.
Yeah, what is one thing that you've seen from that last map that you want, in a way, you want them to fix in this one?
I mean, it's part of the things that come with the growing pains, just creating a new roster, kind of going from an old core to a new core. It's just some of the underlying coordination that comes with these teams. We get a lot of like very active plays, and we see a lot of you'll see uh, Klebito and Duke Nukem, two brothers, kind of spearheading a lot of those engagements because of their aggression, and that's a really good thing to see them be on the same page, but it's kind of making sure the rest of the team is along with that pace as it comes down to players like Plastic P and Fairy Boy. Both are players who are relatively new to the varsity system. All these players, it's their first GLEC. For Fairy Boy, it's their first time in that varsity position. Plastic T was with varsity last year, but it's making sure that everybody's on the same page when it comes to those styles of aggression.
Yeah, but right now it looks like Manchester is running on all cylinders, just taking them out, picking them off. They've been really successful in picking BW off in one-on-one or like multiple people versus one scenarios. And a way that they could change that is probably by grouping up more or by trying to pick off individuals from Manchester as well.
Yeah, unfortunate pick going over onto Clebito getting shot out by the why am I blanking on her name? Sojourn out on the side, and we see the push from Manchester coming out, kind of focusing on the squishies, trying to get isolated fights, just stagger BW as much as they can. And we're seeing it work out pretty well. Duke Nukem able to lead a charge in, and Clebito in the back, actually able to pull out a blade, able to get two and a third. This might be the exact break that BW needs. And as I say, it looks like exactly they're going to get a full wipe here, a little bit of a stagger onto that hazard, and a full cap here. So now this is where I've seen all of these BW rosters excel with, which is holding this position. Once we're able to take this space and play within this little playground, I've seen every BW team do insanely well. So I'm looking to see some of that here.
Yeah, and Clevito doing a great job, especially with that alt. There's already been a couple times where BW has had alt, and then right when they use it, they get taken out. So great way for them to, I mean, for Clevito to be able to a make sure he uses his alt, and then b maximize the potential of his alt.
Yeah, and unfortunate scenes here out of the BW crew, everybody getting wiped when they had point control. So only able to gather a small 30% still should be a very good number going into the future, especially if they're able to get something off of this push, which it's looking like might be the case as Klebito is really starting that charge. Unfortunately, it looks like he will get caught out and finished before the rest of the team can break through and break in. And yeah, what could have been a res ends up being another pick, and BW is going to be stalled out here again as they wait for those respawns, as they wait for the rest of their team to be able to get back to them.
Yeah, especially with the shooters of Sojourn and Hazard, just covering those corners. Manchester is really just locking down the same corner that BW in the past has done really well locking down, just on the other side of the map.
Yeah, the Sojourn ult unfortunately going to be able to find two, and it's looking like it's just going to be able to rip through. This Bastion ult for the last second gets a little bit of value, but unfortunately, just it's going to find nothing, and I don't think BW is going to have the speed necessary to push this point, so that's going to be into the control. Very fast 2-0 here. Manchester taking the lead in overall games. And moving in towards the next, it's looking like what I really want to see out of BW, something that we were talking about earlier as we look at this play, is a lot of just the overall coordination when the team is looking to do a push. Because we saw very big value out of Klebito, able to get that Genji ult, able to get, I think it was two or three, just off of the blade, and able to get a little bit more, even individually, off of the what do you call it? Off of the like just Genji projectiles.
Yep.
But we need to see more than just individual playmaking. We need to see the full team being able to come together on plays without having to burn big ultimates and able to win fights.
Yeah, unfortunately you can't get ults fast, but you can't get ults to win every single fight. That's not feasible to do, especially if you're depending on one ult to like a Genji blade. Like if you had like Spooky Ripley had a potentially really good play with the Reaper ult on point, but right when they were about to use it, they got taken out.
Mhm.
And there was a couple more times. I think there was a Ramatra ult as well that was taken out right before it was used, and just like
Yeah.
those were just little mistakes of just like once those are hammered out, and that's not even like throughout the season. That's like now.
Yep.
Just like make sure you have more health when you pop the ult.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, once those are hammered out, this should be a much closer contest.
Yeah, it's very small things that happen like individually in the game, and it's very small things that can be actually very easily like shift it up within the actual like team within the roster. Timings on things, obviously, you're going to get significantly better at them as time goes on. And with this being the first week, the first match that this team has played, not only for some of these players at a varsity level, but also for all these players at a GLEC level, it's a very different environment. So obviously, first game jitters, it's all going to be a thing. It's exactly like we were talking about with the Smash broadcast before, because this is the first game. They're facing off on not a horrible opponent. These aren't somebody that they should roll over, but it's a very good litmus test to kind of see, okay, what do we need to work on going forward? And I think some of those intangibles, some of those things that you have to work out in the background, things like, oh, how do our alts kind of work together? When we don't have alts, how do we want to play these situations? How do we play our advantage and our dis? It's all a lot of things that, again, this team has been together for a week. So some of those things I don't expect them to have down, but it's all things to look forward to going towards the future.
Yeah, for a lot of these teams, it is just this is this is VOD review game. Like the like for Smash, like Smash found out who was on varsity yesterday,
2 days ago,
2 days ago. But yeah, just like very recently. And then for Overwatch, they had their inter scrims,
Monday.
yeah, Monday. So like just a lot of teams of like, okay, we're just figuring out who we're with and let's figure it out. This doesn't mean that this game is over by
Nope.
any means. Just the little bit of cleanups and throughout the game, like you saw Klobito get in his spots. Um, Duke Nukem, if he was able to push with Klobito a couple times, and that was how they were able to cap the point,
Mhm.
especially with like Fairy Boy and Plastic T keeping everyone alive for that one. We saw glimpses just from that alone. We just
Yeah.
need to see that more consistently.
Yeah, and like I was saying, Control has always been an uncomfortable map. I think our academy and our varsity squads for a while now have never quite been able to crack the code, have never been able to exactly figure out what the best way to play it is. But it's a new map, it's a new game, and we're moving on to a very, very popular one. There's a reason people call it Scrims Row. We're moving on to Kings Row here. I believe with these lineups, BW is going to be starting on the attack, which is a map that we found very, very good value out of, very good potential out of when we've played before. One of the biggest things with Kings Row that's very important is that first point, and it's breaking the defense's hold. There's a very simple setup that my team used to use. We had a very, it's a very unusual call for it, but we had a very easy way of telling, hey, play this, like play this way, and it was a very easy way for us to understand. Okay, we need to play to hold, kind of like hold the line, hold the gates. Um, and if this team understands how to break those lines, which I know both these teams have had very, very good experience on, I see no problem in their potential to be able to take this.
Yeah, and what type of lineup would you expect out of this? Like who should Duke Nukem go on tank? Who would you expect Plastic T to go on support?
I've experienced a lot of very different comps for this. Back when I was running Academy, we had a composition that was Orisa, Moira, Lucio, Reaper, Bastion across the board. It didn't matter the map, didn't matter the mode. So I've seen a lot of value come out with Orisa. I know last semester, our varsity team liked to run a lot of Junker Queen, and I think a little bit of Orisa, but I also believe they did run some Rhine, and I feel like this is very much the Rhine map. So I'm not very um, I don't think it's very out of the ordinary for this Rhine to be run. I will also say this composition I feel could actually do a lot of very good damage. We have a lot of very up close, very big damage dealers and a lot of tank busters, which I think is really what we need because the Hazard last map was really posing an issue. And even though the Hazard is gone here, that Junker Queen could pose a lot of an issue. What we're seeing here for Manchester is a very interesting setup. It's much more pulled back. They're kind of giving BW space up to statue, but a lot of the space closer to map is being, quad held even. And we're seeing a little bit of that pressure here, and what that can allow is a little bit of a pounce as
Yeah,
all of BW drops.
it's more so giving them statue, but right when they crossed that line from statue, gung ho, and
Mhm.
it ended in a team kill right there. So it's going to be how do you kind of the same way of that tank of the tank busters that BW has. How is BW going to deal with Manchester's constant pressure because Manchester's on defense first?
Yeah, and this is one of the things where I think a lot of the issues that I mentioned before when we talk about control, when we talk about kind of everyone playing on the same pace, is going to become a lot more prevalent on this map because a setup like this where you're giving the other team statue is really good against teams that have a little bit of coordination issues and maybe aren't as coordinated as some other teams because statue essentially proves as a okay, if the team pushes through statue, you can just ring around the rosy and play around statue. But if the team that you're playing against doesn't fully pressure out of it, you can very easily just swarm them on one side because they don't really have a way to go out. So what I would love to see from BW is a little bit maybe faster on the play calling because we're seeing a lot of Manchester just being able to kind of hold their positions. They aren't being pressured a ton and they aren't really being forced out of their comfort.
Yeah, and right now, I think one of the bigger things is that Sojourn with the high ground, especially with that Disruptor orb, that not so recent buff that it got, just doing a whole lot of damage in a consistent area of effect like Statue, and just everyone else on the team just being able to set them up, including this Junker Queen who's staying alive throughout all these gunfire. Spooky Ripley having no more fade, but getting away from a potential death scenario though, just to die.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The BW started to get some picks, but that fight really was started, and a lot of the damage was already done by the time that BW started to fight back. The Sojourn all was able to pick off at least two, is what I saw in the kill feed. So again, looking towards still a minute 20 left on this first segment. So we're looking to see if BW can get a little bit of pressure, maybe even a tick, make their defense a little bit easier. That way they're not living on the very edge. But the Kitsune Rush coming out for the side of Manchester is going to provide a lot of pressure for Manchester.
Yeah, now most everyone has alt right now, so this should be at least the first point that they should take. And the best case scenario would be without using any, if all, for alt to take this point and start moving this payload.
Yeah, as I say, we're seeing a lot of damage from BW coming out onto Manchester. A really nice pick from Duke Nukem, continuing the pressure that they were finding before. Unfortunately, there's still two left on point, and there's a third coming back. It's the Junker Queen, the Riptire, unable to do really much of anything. And Duke Nukem now, I feel like he's kind of left alone on point just to try to do what he can, but he unfortunately will not. 30 seconds left on the clock. It's going to be all down to BW. They had a really good amount of pressure, but they weren't able to capitalize getting that first tick. And now it's all going to be down to RBW really able to kind of crack this defense and get into something. A lot of it is going to have to come down to this final 10 seconds. The Kitsune rush for BW on their own with the push is going to be great. Kobito with the opener picked back from the side of Manchester, but Kobito getting a second here. There's one person, the Sojourn left up top is going to get picked, but it's all down to Duke Nukem and Spooky Ripley. A 2v3 here on the point is going to provide somewhat difficult. But the first tick is found. Duke Nukem able to get the charge, able to find the Junker Queen off point, but Spooky Ripley is going to die. And I don't believe there is going to be a touch here for BW Fairy Boy who instantly gets picked. It's all down to Plastic T who falls, and that'll be the first half of Kings Row here for BW.
There was really good potential there, though. Right when they were able to get on point, I think the biggest thing was when almost all of them had alt, and yet the supports were still able to stay alive. Because yes, you want to save those alts, but other than the Riptire that was used, even though it missed in the end, like everyone was trying to conserve their alts, and then because the alts were conserved, nobody got the picks off the two supports, especially the Lucio, and they were able to stall until the Junker Queen came through, and then it just steamrolled from. I mean, then it snowballed from there.
Yep. Again, it's stuff like that where they were probably aware of the alts that were on the board, but it's just unable to find those targets that are going to provide so much going into the later round. What we're seeing here is a little bit of a different lineup, a lot of the same DPS line, a swap out of Brig slash Kiri for that Mercy, and then we're going to be seeing the Czar out on the board for Duke Nukem, which I'm not entirely sure how I see this playing out, but I think it could provide a lot of value if they're able to really, you know, get in and get the damage that they need and get the charge that they can get with something like a Czar bubble.
Yeah, I mean, if I got shot at as many times as Duke Nukem, I might have switched as well.
That's real. That's very real. With this match about to start, again, it's a lot about BW as we can see here, playing very up close and personal. They're playing for that line. They don't have a lot of space to give just because of how they are situated here, but it's going to be very important. We see the Widow online for the side of Manchester, not playing in the window as I would have expected, playing a little bit closer onto the ground. Ripley playing very far up, what could have been very bad, is now able to get out. And now we see a lot of damage coming through. Spooky Ripley, unfortunately, going to be dropping here. And we see the rest of the team have to come up with a plan, have to coordinate, and find some sort of opening, some sort of beginning pick. A little bit of charge coming in here for Duke Nukem's Zarya, but it's not going to be doing a lot. We see Plastic T unfortunately getting picked out here, and now it's a 4v4 5, I believe, on the site. Damage coming out. It's going to be the one for one trades here. It's going to be down to just Duke Nukem and Spooky Ripley. Manchester getting a little bit more. Now it's all down to Duke Nukem getting swarmed, getting picked out. And there should be a touch here for BW. There may be a touch here for BW, but that's going to tick down. And that's a 2-0 lead for Manchester here within this game. Yep.
Yeah, but now moving on to game. Is it game three? Is it game three
Game
for?
three. These are
Okay.
3 of 5s.
So for game three, this one is just. These ones have been not the greatest, but especially I want to say with this Sojourn, when Manchester was defending the Sojourn, I believe only died once, and that was from late in the round when what's it called, when Duke Nukem hit him with a fire strike. But other
Yeah.
than that, just that Sojourn in that top corner was just sitting there, and especially with the disruptor orb and Sojourn charge was just getting as much charge that it wanted with little to no competition for it.
Yeah, we really need to see again. It's when I talk about the like concepts like target focus. That's a thing that comes with time with this team. Again, a very new team, so I can see where maybe a little bit of that, maybe the calling structure, maybe still a little bit up in the air as it tends to be for a minute. But the biggest thing with that is figuring out what targets are very important within their composition and what you need to focus on. Things like the Sojourn, your like more hit scanish player, your more big damage players, are something that need to be focused, but at the same time, like you mentioned within that big team fight, the support alts that were able to stay up for so long because the supports were able to stay up for so long, finding out kind of what is very important for the team to focus, what's kind of the linchpin for the enemy, and then being able to neutralize that as soon as possible. Because for the side of Manchester, Manchester is doing that very well against BW. They're neutralizing the front line of the tank. There isn't
Yep.
much like a lot of things are kind of being com- composed and kind of fought top down, where the tank is kind of leading the charge, and you'll get some of your deeps kind of forcing up into that, but everything's staying very top down. And so being able to isolate and being able to pick Duke Nukem, it's unfortunately giving BW a lot of issues because they lose a lot of their front line, a lot of their push.
Yeah, you can't. It's not the it's not the easiest thing in the world to push without a tank,
Nope.
especially in this game. And just like you said, just picking up Duke Nukem, and then it would be up to Ripley and especially Klebito to push that line themselves. And Klebito has had variable success, and just like with Ripley as well, but it's just like I almost said Ramatra. Reaper and Junkrat aren't really the ones that are going to push the line for you.
They can. It's just very hard for them alone too, and that's kind of the thing. It's when we talk about these games, one of the biggest things for these is coordination. Um, it's extremely hard for just a solo to be able to do as much damage as may be needed, where a team of 5 could do that. We're seeing our map swap up here. We're going to be moving to a escort map, just a pure escort. We're going to be moving over to Dorado here for our third game of the day. And escorts I find are maybe a little bit easier to like fully coordinate on because your line in the sand is kind of pre-drawn for you by that payload.
And also kind of moving.
Exactly. So you do have to, obviously, initial breaks and stuff are going to be very hard, and when the team you're playing against fully reconvenes and fully pushes back, that's always going to be very hard to do. But because your line in the sand is not a stationary kind of, you know, immovable object. It's a constantly shifting tide. That's where things like hard setups maybe are a little bit harder to break, and things that are a little bit easier to set up for are those rolling kind of pushes where you can have solo plays, solo pop offs provide a lot more of that value compared to something like a stationary kind of just hunker down type of composition.
Yeah, I think this is going to show, at least for escort, how versatile they are while in escort.
Yes.
Because not only do you have to win in the beginning of the map, where a character like Hanzo and Widowmaker has that free high ground, but then you have to go to where the or where the opening picture is, and there's a lot of environmentals that you could hide behind and
Hmm.
heal behind, and just like continually the environmental change, just like how versatile you could be and consistently winning those fights, especially if they're pushing. If they're defending, same thing. When you have the high ground, or when you have the easy high ground in the front push, versus when they're pushing the last part in the I forgot the room, but like the little
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get what you're
metallic
saying.
room.
Yeah, yeah. The like I think I call it like labs or something, but like yes,
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. Um, Escort's a very interesting one because team compositions are very like they're strange. It's similar to hybrid, similar to a lot of these maps. When you have a thing that moves, different sections of the map are going to favor different play styles and different styles of characters. But at the same time, there's almost something where having something that just kind of by and large covers is also very good. And that's something where uh, a more comfort composition could potentially provide a lot more value to a squad like BW compared to a potentially more flip-floppy um, map that could provide a lot more of a problem.
yeah. So like, what is one thing that you want to see, especially out of Duke Nukem, because once again, they're targeting him, they're picking him off first than everyone else. So what adjustment would you do if you were in his place?
I'm not in the comms, which is kind
I
of the
mean,
main
true.
thing. Well, yes, but I was going to say, that's kind of where a lot of that comes down to. One of the big things about some of the best tank players that we've had and some of the best tank players that I've worked with is their ability to kind of direct traffic and kind of call the team and be able to say, I want us to try to do this or I want us to push for that. And obviously, because I'm not there, I can't say whether he is or isn't, but it's looking like there maybe isn't a lot of full team direction. It's something that I'm just kind of seeing. There isn't a lot of big damage going on to one person, which kind of comes down to your composition. When you have a lot of close range characters, and you don't have a lot of long range. It's kind of hard to apply pressure from far because,
Yeah,
it's just kind of how it is. But I would love to see the team again. I mentioned coordination a lot because this game is a lot of coordination.
a
It's a
lot of
lot of
coordination.
everybody going and getting on the same page, doing the same thing. And a lot of that, I think, especially with Escort, although that ground is moving as we get loaded in here, a lot of what that comes down to is really that coordination across the line, being able to say that your DPS and your supports and your tanks all understand what the game plan is, and nobody is confused on what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and either way, we're going to go into game number three right now. We're going to see the setups for both teams, as it looks like BW is going to attack first, I believe.
Yep.
And so a map like I almost said Scrims Row, like Kings Row, one that I know at least Plastic T and Clabito were very comfortable on, versus one that I personally have not seen them play often in competitive play.
Yeah.
But either way, maybe that change up is good for Spooky Ripley, Fairy Boy, and Duke Nukem, as and it might balance out the maybe unfamiliarity, because they still play this game a lot. Either way,
Hmm.
that Plastic T and Clabito have.
Yep. It's always a toss up when it comes to maps. Understanding your map pool and understanding what your team is good at is a very, very big task when you move into whatever is next. And when you look at, you know, the game plan for what is going to be the play here from BW, this Winston pick coming out is going to be very interesting to see as we try to see BW dive onto the high ground. Unfortunately, the Ana is going to provide a lot of issues. The Antinate and the Sleep already coming out and already doing some pretty big damage. However, just like we were talking about in the pregame, with that payload being that line of scrimmage and it moving around, not really being tied down to just a single point on the map. We're already seeing BW get a fair amount of damage as the first pick for Manchester comes in, being able to pick off Plastic T up in the skies. And it's going to call what almost looks like a full regroup here for BW. I can see that really coming down. Losing one of your main healers provides a lot of damage, and the amount of damage that Manchester were able to get, really calling for the team to regroup and reset and choose what they want to do next.
Yeah, and I like what he did right there. Even though they probably said it on comms, but like just pointing out, oh, here are where the supports are. Here is mainly where they are going, and just being able to coordinate and hopefully pick off both of those because, like what you said, that Ana's already been putting in a lot of work, and we're only on the first point of the map.
hmm And as we see, that's where some issues can come in. The dive was attempted, but it didn't work out very early on, and then the elongated fight allowed for the rest of Manchester's team to be able to get over and coordinate with the rest of them, forcing BW back into another full regroup and another full reset. We're about halfway through this first point here for BW with about 2 minutes left on the clock, and it's very much doable. We haven't quite lost our space yet as we see Clabito swapping back over to the junk, looking to potentially get some more damage out, looking to get some more pressure out here, instantly getting tagged up a lot, needing a
If, it,
large amount of heals.
if there's one thing I know about the Clabito Junkrat, he always knows a spot.
He always knows a spot, and we're going to have to see if that spot is enough to find them some more pressure here on this first point. We see a lot of pressure coming out from Duke Nukem here up on the top. They're able to get the pick onto Bread, but three players antied is going to provide a lot of issues unless Duke Nukem decides to rocket himself in with the alt. It's going to be providing a lot of pressure, a lot of damage. Plastic T, unfortunately, going to be dropping along with Fairy Boy. It's going to be leaving three people up for BW as the Echo ult comes back down. But Spooky Ripley on one, Clabito down, and it's now all down to Duke Nukem, who's going to get picked out. 1 minute left on the timer here for BW to try to find something on this initial push map. And they found some good spacing, but I would love to see if we could potentially get to that first checkpoint, get a little bit more time on the clock, and really get some of that blood flowing.
Yeah, because of those pushes, especially with that Winston ult as well, they gave themselves a lot of room to breathe, which has been something that has not come often for this team. As it looks like most, if not all of them, are pushing to the top, while Duke Nukem was hit hard enough to go back down. Um, and now that's two picked off by Manchester. Wannabe gamer with the two kills with Genji ult.
Yeah,
Now only 25 seconds.
mm,
BW needs to make a play in quickly.
yeah, this is where things get desperate. This is where you're going to try to do some sort of gamble play, which I will say ended up working very well for them last time. In the last map on that hybrid, they were able to find a lot of good stuff within that final moments. Unfortunately, it's looking like that is not going to be the case. Full Manchester here. Ripley able to find one off of that all and getting some good damage, able to find a second, but the rest of Manchester will be enough to overwhelm. And we'll look to see if Duke Nukem can stay alive for long enough. He cannot. And there will be a touch by Clabito here onto the point, trying to stick, trying to get some damage, get some spacing, maybe find some spicks, but he will be brought down, trying to pull out the rip tire. And that will be round one here. Manchester able to mount enough of a defense to hold off the BW offensive. And now with the roles flipped, it's really about BW trying to hold Manchester off of that space.
Yeah, right now, kind of like how it was in King's Row, it's kind of you can't lose a fight because once that fight's moved, that payload might already. I mean, once that fight's lost, that payload might already be moved enough to cap that point. Only 57 meters is not too much of a push.
It's not especially far, and although it might not be one fight, one very good team fight or one very good stagger might be all that it takes for Manchester to seal the 3-0 victory here in week one of these GLEC regular season for the Erie division. And as we look over here, we're seeing um, a composition that isn't super surprising to me. Uh, Trying to go for a little bit more long range, kind of trying to emulate what Manchester was doing on their defense. I would expect to see both of the healers of Plastic T and Fairy Boy playing up along that height, while we see players like Spooky Ripley and Clabido playing a little bit more in the mix along with Duke Nukem. I see a lot of potential here, especially because they just saw how potent and how powerful a composition like this can be. I think it's just a matter of how well the two or the three on the bridge play compared to the two of Duke Nukem and Spooky Ripley here playing up on height. You're
Yeah,
seeing
there's no problem with copying your opponent, especially if you see it working.
exactly. We're going to be seeing this start here. Duke Nukem and the enemy tank of bread going to be clashing very early on. Duke Nukem dropping from height, trying to get a little bit more damage, but instantly jumping back up, securing that space and securing maybe what could be a ton of damage on his head will now be mitigated. As we've got the distance play from Plastic T and Fairy Boy sitting on that back bridge, looking to get a little bit more pressure as Duke Nukem looks to jump on the enemy tank. He is going to be dropped. Clabido dropped within the mix, but BW now with even numbers here on this front line. Duke Nukem unfortunately dropped on that jump up, and the sleep on the Echo is going to be enough for BW to able to get that pick and get the pick onto Genji Wannabe Gamer. It's now down just left to the supports of Manchester, who will be dropped and moved back. It's going to be Bread actually returning. Going to be getting a lot of damage on his head. No confirms found for either team here in this fight. A lot of damage going left and right. No true confirms anywhere as Duke Nukem tries to take a little bit of space into that. Bread getting dropped in the back line along with Plastic T. Fairy Boy getting slept. However, it looks like it will not matter. Duke Nukem forcing the enemy team back into their spawn. Manchester having to look for this regroup.
Yeah, that was a great rotation done by Plastic T and Fairy Boy. Saw that everybody was heading towards them, and if they were the ones who die right there, then there's nobody else to hear the rest of the team. And yet they rotated, getting back as far as they could with Plastic T in that position once again, just far enough to hit her teammates, but not too far so that the enemies are able to hit her. But either way, as they kind of targeted the back line with that one while I was mentioning it, just a lot of that rotation was able to help them get that point.
Yeah, Manchester here has gotten a handful of good picks. A lot of BW is going to be back in on that rotation. And what we're seeing here is a final kind of scrap for their lives. Duke Nukem and Spooky Ripley left on the point. Spooky Ripley unfortunately going to be dropping, as will Duke Nukem's ult. But the rest of the team now back. The rally being called in by Fairy Boy, unfortunately getting picked here, and Duke Nukem getting antied. It's all down to Plastic T and Clabido here on this hold. Clabido coming in from the sky is able to get a little bit of damage, but unfortunately will find nothing along with Plastic T. And with no BW left, that's going to be the game. A 3-0 here for Manchester within this week one of GLEC.
It
And
happens.
yeah, it happens. I mean, we saw our smash earlier today. It happens, it is what it is. Um, Big notes coming out from week one, I would say. I think what we saw here actually I would say gives us a lot of promise. I would say shows a lot of potential going forward. Although the losses were kind of tough, there were individual sparks of brilliance on every single map, which shows to me at least that there can be something very good coming out of this team. There is still a very good showing from this team, and obviously it is week one. There is still a lot left to be played. Again, they've got matches going every week from now up until I think early April.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah.
Because lands around. Yeah, because lands around the 11th or the
Lands
12th.
the 11th and the 12th. So We've
which
still
is my
got
mom's birthday, so I get to broadcast LAN on my mom's birthday.
yay. Um, so yeah, obviously a long time to go for these players, a lot of time to get their skills together, to get the team comps together, to get the ideas together. And what I think was shown early was actually very good. Again, individual showings from Clabito, we showed that he had a very good amount of a good showing. Plastic T on the Ana actually got very good value, and Duke Nukem kind of showing that he could be a Swiss Army knife as far as whatever's needed with tank preference. What I would love to see coming into the next couple of weeks is maybe more of an idea of a sedentary of what we want as far as who is playing what and kind of how we're playing around. The other thing that I would love to see, which obviously wasn't able to happen, um, the like strength of the full varsity squad. One of our varsity players, the boss baby, is unfortunately sick after
No,
some
the boss baby is
yeah,
sick.
after some expeditions over winter break, he unfortunately caught some sort of cold flu and has to be um, on rest for this week. I believe we'll be having him back starting next week. I'm not entirely sure what his
Should
recovery
be.
timeline looks like, but we're obviously wishing the best for him and hoping to have him back as soon as possible. He also provides a lot of the you know, a lot more calling and a lot more of the structure for this team simply because he was, in the varsity program last year. He was one of our varsity players last semester, and then the semester before, he worked very closely with Plastic T and with Spooky Ripley on our academy program. So we'd love to have him back into the fray and kind of see how that changes up, how their play calling goes, maybe how their aggression works and everything. It's
it
all yet to
it
be
will
seen.
definitely add more coordination to it because like not that they were just going out there willy-nilly, but it felt like there was a bit less of kind of what we said of like coordinated attack, like with that sojourn that was just perched on the corner, or with like yeah, just like with specific characters, like there was just a bit less of direction. Not
Mhm.
saying that there wasn't at all, but it's just something to work on. And the boss baby definitely he'll definitely make known where he wants to attack.
Yep, he'll be a very good driving force, a very good driving voice within this team. And yeah, that's all that we have for you all this week. Be sure to tune around. Next week, we don't have any NACE matches starting up quite
We do
yet.
not.
Those will be starting in early February, and then you'll be able to hear this guy and potentially me on this broadcast a lot more. So if you enjoy our voices and enjoy some of the antics that you've heard on stream, be sure to stick around. Next week, we'll just be having our GLEC. It'll be another round of Smash and another round of Overwatch. Same time, same place as per usual.
And if you don't like our voices, then stick around anyways because there will probably be more casters anyways.
We're hoping to get more. Also, if you don't like our voices, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's all for me. That's all for my man LT Barone over here. Um, yeah,
Yep, thank you, and we will see you next week.
we'll catch you all then.